Murphy.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Great to meet you as well.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks for having us here today.
No problem, my pleasure.
Tell me about what a fire department is all about here in our community.
Okay, so originally, obviously, fire departments started because of the fire problem. Through time, that has evolved, and fire department is an integral part of our emergency medical system for the town. We also have responses in other things such as emergency management, hazardous material responses, technical rescue responses, water-related issues, or anything like that. So we kind of say that we're the people that you call when you don't know what's going on.
How long have you been fire chief, and how did you become fire chief through this process?
So I've been fire chief for a little under a year and a half now. I was promoted in March of 2018. My career to get to this point started actually back when I was about 15 years old, when I started working as a ski patroller, a volunteer ski patroller up at Blue Hills in Milton. And I realized that I actually enjoyed working in emergency and medical field and providing assistance to people and that type of thing. So that kind of got my foot in the door. And then when I was in college, I became a basic EMT, I started working on ambulance services at the time, both volunteer in college, and then I worked full-time for different private ambulance companies over the summertime. And after college, I continued through that, and I eventually became a paramedic and spent 7 years working for different private ambulance companies, or I worked for social hospitals, paramedic service at the time. Back around late 90s, early 2000s, many of the fire departments started specifically hiring paramedics and then training them to become firefighters afterwards. I was one of those. And so I started here because the fire department also runs the ambulance service, and that was my background, and I enjoyed that. And once I got into the department here, I realized that there were many other opportunities that I enjoyed as well, especially learning about some of the fire things. And I took a number of leadership courses, a number of different training courses through the Mass Fire Academy, and progressed my way through the ranks. Eventually to the point that I went back to school, got a master's degree in public administration, and again continued rising up through, and I was promoted to deputy chief in 2015, and then when Chief Robert Olson retired, I was promoted to chief in 2018.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. It's quite an honor. I'm proud to say that we have some great men and women that work for the fire department here, and it's a pleasure working with them. This is the admin offices for the fire department. This is my office as the chief. I have Kathy, our administrative assistant, works right out here. The Deputy Chief LaChance has an office down here, and we have another Deputy Chief Bill Powers, has an office around the corner. We also have another gentleman named Lieutenant Chris Napoli that is our fire prevention officer for the department, and his office is actually at Town Hall on the second floor in the building department.
Now this is Station 1 headquarters.
It is, yes.
We have 2 other firehouses in town?
We do. We have Station 2, which is also known as Torrent, is the nickname for it, or West Hingham, which is located down on South Street and North Street, right at Baxter, down at Torrent Crossing. Then we also have Station 3, which is known as Constitution, which is up near the South School on Main Street. So the 3 stations.
Now, the general public, when they have a non-emergency need, let's say I'm looking for a burn permit, where do I go for that?
So for a burn permit, you come here, and there's only a limited time of the year that we actually allow outside burning, and it's actually the state that regulates that. The DEP actually controls how long and when the burn season is. But yes, you would come here for that. For the other permits that people may need, then usually if they have to come in for them, then they would go to Lieutenant Napoli's office over at the town hall. There's a lot of other things that they can do just by scheduling us with the phone. So for example, whenever someone sells a home in town, they're required to get a certificate for us that their smoke and carbon monoxide detectors are in compliance. And they can just schedule that either through a website that we have, or they can call up the fire department, and there's a special number. They just leave their information, and then we go out and take care of the inspection at their house.
How does the fire department communicate to the community at large in a non-emergency way?
So in a non-emergency way, we do have a department website that we can post information on, that if anyone is looking for information, and there are things on there, like I mentioned, the smoke detectors, on the contact information on how they would schedule. There's also a little bit of description about the burning permits and what the burning season is. All that type of stuff is on our webpage. We do have some administrative lines that people can call in and ask questions about. And again, that's on our webpage, or it's 781-741-1416. One of the things that I think we experience a lot is there are a lot of people that may be hesitant to call 911, that they'll call us and say, well, I need the fire truck to come out, but it's really not an emergency. And we tell all the people all the time that to call 911 and then just mention that, hey, it's not an emergency. And that's an example might be if their smoke detector was sounding, but there was no smoke or fire or anything, and they didn't know if it was defective. We're still going to send the apparatus out to take a look at it, and we will send them without lights and sirens on, but we actually don't dispatch the apparatus. It gets dispatched from our dispatch center over at Town Hall. Normally at this station we have the shift commander who operates out of a vehicle here. He's the captain that's in charge of the shift for the 24-hour duty time. And we also have our ladder truck that operates here that will respond to any type of call that we need in service here for the town. You can actually see that this is our brand new ladder compared to the old ladder. This is a 1999 truck that was being replaced. It served the town very well, but it's 20 years old and it's starting to get a little bit tired. So we just actually purchased this, had to spend about probably 3 months doing training on it for driver training and getting used to using it, because as you can see, it's a very different truck, from the old one, not just the height of it, but there's a lot of different features that this truck has that the old truck didn't.
It has the name Quint on it. What does that mean?
So the Quint is just the fact that the truck has the ability to do 5 different things. So specifically, it has the aerial. It also has a certain complement of ground ladders, meaning that, portable ladders that we could take and carry up to the house. It also has a fire pump on it, which in this case, it's a 1,500 gallon per minute pump. It also has a fire tank. So this truck carries 500 gallons of water. The old truck was a Quint as well, but it only carried 300 gallons of water, and it carries hose on it.
What's the life cycle of equipment like this? And we know that you have to account for wear, tear, and perhaps weather. Honestly, it really depends on the vehicle itself sometimes. We anticipate right now that this is probably 20 to 25 years, Some places, and depending upon what the call volume is, you might be able to get 30 years out of it. But this truck it's replacing was 20 years, and it's starting to, get a little tired on it. There's a lot of, complex moving parts on it, a lot of computer systems, and after a certain point, then it just becomes harder to work on them or to replace them and stuff. So typically a ladder truck, 20 to 25 years is, fairly standard. On an engine, then you're looking at 15 to 20 years is usually about normal. All of this gear is only valid for 10 years, and then it's considered expired. A little over $3,000 per set, so everyone gets issued at least one. We're in the process of getting it so that everyone will get a second set that's within that same 10-year period. So basically, the guys will get a new set of gear every 5 years, and we kind of continue building on that because it's something that, if they use it at one fire, it has to be properly cleaned afterwards. And we don't want them having to put it back on for another call later on in their shift when they're working. I see our firefighters wearing this gear in all types of weather.
Yes.
So it must be designed of a certain type of material to withstand the extreme external temperatures of cold and hot.
It is, but as we sometimes like to describe it, the gear is it's designed to protect them, but at certain times it can actually hurt them a little bit too. So the way I used to describe the gear to people is picture putting on your warmest winter coat that you have, then putting a raincoat on top of it, and then a denim jacket over on top of that. And that's basically what you're getting. So
even during the wintertime, if the firefighters are working and, carrying hoses around, ladders, whatever the case, they're going to be sweating, even on some of the coldest days. Now, you take some of the, summer heat that we have and you put them in those same conditions, then they can get heat exhaustion very quickly.
What's the weight of this?
When they have all of their gear, so all of their turnout gear and an air pack, it's roughly around 75 pounds. So.
Wow.
Yeah. There's been a big focus on cancer from firefighters, and there's been many, many studies that have shown that firefighters are much more prone to certain types of cancers than other people that live in the same neighborhoods. So there's been a lot of focus as to why that's happened, and one of the things that they target is the gear, because as they're, firefighters are going into a burning building, there, are all sorts of products of combustion that will get on their clothes, and they'll actually get on them too, because it's, even though these are fairly well sealed up, they're not completely airtight, so the firefighters will come out and they may have some black soot around their neck or around their face, or even their hands will get covered in things. So, years ago, that wasn't really considered that much of a problem. Now there's been the identification that these are actually what is probably contributing to the cancer risk, is these carcinogens that's on their gear or anything else. So, we don't want them to continue to expose themselves. So, as I mentioned, we want to have 2 sets for everyone, and that's because as soon as we, have a fire and use this, then we need to properly clean it. And we need to make sure that, everything that gets in touch with it, it gets cleaned. We actually have a rule in our stations that the gear is not to leave this apparatus floor, and they can't go walking into the office or go upstairs with it, because now they're going to contaminate everything. So there's a big focus on the fire service to get better about that, and most of the stations are trying to get commercial gear washers or something like that to properly clean the gear and decontaminate it afterwards. So,
do you have a gear washer?
We do have one at the station. We also have one at one of our outside stations as well. These hoses are exhaust hoses that connect up to the vehicles.
Yes.
So whenever they start them, then all of the exhaust will go up and it goes out through a filtration system so that it doesn't contaminate the gear or contaminate the station and all that type of stuff.
Now, when you're in a firehouse, one of the first things that people like to look for is, where's the pole?
That is true. The station was originally built in the 40s, and it did have a fire pole at the time. When they did the renovation, then they kind of realized, and many fire departments across the country are doing this, that the fire poles can actually be a little dangerous. And unfortunately, there have been firefighters that have been injured or killed because they tripped in the middle of the night and they fell down into the hole for it, or there have been children that have been playing around and fell or anything like that. So a lot of fire departments are no longer using the pole. Some of them are actually using slides, to be honest with you. We don't have one of those, we just have stairs. But we did choose to keep the fire poles just as a historical type of thing. So you can see we actually just mounted the fire pole here. There's another one over on this side. These were the 2 poles that were original to the station. Okay, so right up this way is where we refer to it as the staff areas. So we're coming into here, this is the kitchen, and then we have what we refer to as the common area over here, which is kind of an area where the firefighters can eat their meals, or they can, relax a little bit between calls, all that type of stuff. So typically for us, the firefighters are working 24-hour shifts. So obviously during that time they have to, eat and all that type of stuff. So this is the kitchen that we have, similar to regular residential type of kitchen. And some of the groups will cook together as meals. Some of them, because there's only a few people working in each of the stations, some of them will kind of do their own thing. It just depends on who is a good chef and who isn't, and if you're lucky enough you got one of those guys working with you or something else. When you're here for 24 hours, you need a little bit of relaxation. We also do have a weight room in the station that we want to encourage the firefighters to take advantage of that anytime they can, whether it's off duty or if they're on duty, to come in here, because it's a very physical job. And so unfortunately, cardiac disease is still the leading cause of firefighter fatalities across the country. So we want to make sure that we're promoting healthy habits for them. So
I see you have a number of photographs here on the wall. Tell us a little bit about some of them.
So many of these are fires that have happened here in Hingham. Most of them are actually many years ago, going back to, some of them are from the 70s and 80s. One of the things that we're trying to do actually is downstairs in towards the administration area is to do a better job of showing off some of our history and, taking a lot of these older photographs, not these up here per se, but we have many others that, we'd like to put on display, and it just, kind of never really happened. But, there's a lot of history in this department and within the community, and we want to kind of make sure that we pay tribute to it. So you can see in here, they each have a locker. They have spare uniforms in their locker to change if they got their clothes contaminated or anything else. And we have washers and dryers here that they can, clean up with afterwards. The firefighters are here 24 hours a day. So they do have to have some place that they can, hopefully catch a little bit of sleep.
Sure.
But, to be honest with you, it's not the same thing. People always ask, they say, oh, that must be fantastic that you get to go to work and you get paid to go to sleep. It's not really like that at all, because the firefighters, they're on duty 24 hours a day, and they always can get woken up at any time. So I used to always tell my family that if I got a couple of hours of sleep at night, it was not the same as if you got that same amount of time of sleep at home, because there's always the thought in the back of your mind that you're going to get woken up at any time and you're going to have to go on a response. So it does take a little bit, the schedule takes a little bit to get used to, and it can unfortunately have a little bit of toll on the firefighters as well sometimes.
Yeah, I was going to ask about stress reduction, PTSD.
It's something that there's, like the cancer focus, there has been much more of an increased focus on it over the last 10 years as well. I think that the question is out whether or not there's actually more of a concern, or not a concern if the problem is worse, because now firefighters and police officers are being exposed to, the active threat type of situations, and, a lot more, especially with the opiate abuse and or the opiate problem in the country, and they're getting exposed to younger suicides. So some people question whether or not the calls that we're responding to is contributing to this. And then there are other experts that actually kind of feel that the stress has always been there, and we're just starting to actually pay attention to it a little bit more and trying to address it as, through PTSD and different programs that are out there. But it's definitely a concern. There's a, number of things that, are affecting firefighters, and unfortunately it also affects their family too. We talked about with the cancer, some of that stuff can go back and affect their families if they're not properly decontaminated. Obviously the PTSD is the same thing, and the cardiac issues. So it's a great job, but there are some some hazards that you pay to do this career as well.
How does one become a firefighter, and what process does one go through?
So it depends on the community, on where you are, what their hiring process is. Here in Hingham, we actually are part of a civil service system. So there's entrance exams that are required for that process. And they must go through and meet certain requirements and stuff just for a written entrance exam. But traditionally for many departments, a lot of the initial training is EMS related, emergency medical services. So as I mentioned earlier, we predominantly hire people that are already trained as a paramedic, and then we'll train them to be a firefighter afterwards. Occasionally we've done it the other way, that we've hired people and then trained them for the EMS side afterwards. But we've actually had better success on hiring paramedics. To become a paramedic could take someone about 1.5 to 2 years, because first you have to become a basic EMT, then you have to become a paramedic, then you would try to get a job working for a fire department. After that point, the initial firefighter training is about 11 weeks long. We send them to the Mass Fire Academy, which is actually out in Stowe, and they go through an 11-week recruit class to learn how to be a basic firefighter. In addition to that, there are many other programs that the Fire Academy will train guys on, whether or not it's hazmat, public education, fire investigation, fire prevention. There's many different leadership trainings, fire instructor programs. There's a wealth of programs that are out there through the Mass Fire Academy, and they're great for us because it actually doesn't cost us anything to send our firefighters to any of these programs. So we definitely try to take advantage of it as much as we can. We have 2 firefighters that are also trained as mechanics that work for the fire department. They've, both gone to specialty schools because it's a little different working on a fire engine than working on a normal vehicle. There's a lot of different, emergency components to it and all that stuff. So there's certain certifications that they need to do that. So these 2 gentlemen will work on the trucks on a regular basis. They do all the preventive maintenance. They'll do a little bit more complicated type of things occasionally. And then we sometimes have to send our vehicles out to the manufacturer to have stuff worked on as well. So.
Chief, you've got a lot of moving parts here in your system, and it's quite impressive. What's your vision for the future? Where do you see the department going?
The fire department is constantly evolving, and fire department has been involved in the EMS side since the 70s. We've been involved in other specialized type of things, technical rescues, whatever, for many years as well. So I'd like to see our department continue to evolve. Recently, we started working with a number of other town departments on a program that's going to offer home safety visits for different residents, especially we're honestly targeting more of the elderly residents, but we want to be able to, do a little bit more prevention type of thing, especially on the EMS side. So, we may look at something that, start addressing some of our patients that are getting transported to the hospital and trying to see if there's a way that we can help make sure that they don't need to go to the hospital and, counter some other things. So we've been working with the Elder Services, the Board of Health, South Shore Hospital to kind of create this type of program. So I'd like to see certain things like that. I'd also like to see our department stay current within, either fire related type of things, and continue to advocate for, new safety measures for our firefighters, advocate for new training for our members, and make sure that they have the ability and the tools to do the jobs that they're currently doing a great job of doing. So that would be some of the things specific to Hingham that I'd like to continue working on. Is that, as I mentioned, headquarters here was rebuilt about 10 years ago. Our 2 outside fire stations, unfortunately, we can't say that. And both of them were 1942, and many of the services within those buildings are 1942. Specifically South Hingham, the electrical system still has the screw-in fuses in it. The boilers in both stations are from the 1940s. So a few years ago, the town created the Fire Station Building Committee to look at updating and renovating those stations, and the committee was working and had a plan for Station 2, and then we kind of hit a little bit of roadblock. So I'd like to see that committee continue its charge and work to make sure that we can, update or replace the 2 outside fire stations. And we need to recognize that as the town continues to evolve, then our department will have to evolve as well.
And as I also understand it, perhaps you're talking with our new school superintendent?
Yes.
About a career pathway?
We've already had some discussions, and I understand that it's going to take a little bit of time to work some things, but we want to get our firefighters, especially our public educators and our fire prevention officers, more involved in the schools. And we'd like to start, hopefully, one of my goals would be to offer an EMT program that the students could take while they're in high school. or even to just get an exposure within the schools and, start talking about the things that we do here, whether it's medical type of stuff or fire safety or even just, community risk reduction type of things, because it all kind of falls under the fire department. And, we'd love to get some, kind of start teaching at a younger age. Right now we're doing preschool, kindergarten, 3rd grade, and 5th grade. But we want to do a little bit more in the high school area and stuff as well.
Chief, this has been a great tour. I want to thank you so much, Chief Murphy, for all that you've given us this afternoon. It's quite impressive.
It's been my pleasure, and I'm glad to that you guys could come down and we could show you a little bit about the fire station.
And we look forward to returning in the future.
Thank you very much.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.